So we got some new rules for Kill Team in the form of a balanced data slate, as well as some stats that will help show us the meta of the game. So I'm not going to read through every change they made in this video, I'm just going to give you a brief rundown, and then tell you why I think these stats honestly don't matter that much. So let's start with the stats. The main takeaway is if you lost to Void Dancers, Void Scarred, or Pathfinders, you're not bad, your opponent was just playing overpowered teams, and you can entirely blame it on that. So all joking aside, Games Workshop said that they wanted all their teams to be within the 45 to 55% win rate. So they said ideally everything would be right at 50, but we all know that's not really going to happen, so that's kind of their acceptable range. And those teams I just listed were the only 3 that were outside of that range, and they were all on the high side. So the 2 bottom teams were the Compendium teams, which were all grouped together, and then Warp Coven, which were right on that 45% mark. So I don't think anyone was surprised that the Compendium teams were near the bottom. There are some pretty weak teams in there, and since they're all grouped together, they would bring down the average. So there's a few things I want to go over here, and why I think you really shouldn't focus on these win rates. So one of the reasons is that Kill Team probably has a really small sample size they're pulling from. I mean, it's a niche within a niche, basically. So GW can only draw from tournaments. It's not something like a major video game where there's a ton of matches happening every minute. They only can draw from when people get together for a tournament. And with a smaller sample size, that leaves for stuff like train setup and individual player skill to really come in and skew this data. And probably more importantly, at least for me personally, is this is only measuring matched competitive play. So it's not measuring stuff like narrative games. It's not measuring if you do something where you set up your train in a weird way. And in your own group with only a few players, you probably have a pretty wide variety of player skills. So that's going to probably matter a lot more than the actual teams you're playing. So I don't have numbers on this, but I'm guessing as many people play Kill Team casually as they do in tournaments. So unless you're a tournament player, it's not going to measure how you personally play Kill Team. So that was a kind of long explanation to say, just because your team isn't at the top, don't worry about it, play what you like. So the exception I want to make here is if you are a tournament player. Not that you have to play the team that's at the top, but it's really nice to know what teams are the top 3 or 4 teams, because that's what you're mostly going to play against. So you can really read through and make sure you know all their abilities and all their ploys, so you know what you're facing and you're not constantly getting thrown off by some ploy you didn't know they had. And Kill Team is a lot more fun if both players know what the other one can do, so it's really nice to know what your opponent's team actually is and all their abilities. So just because I'm a filthy casual doesn't mean that Games Workshop shouldn't take whatever data they can get and try to improve their game with it. So using this data, they basically took Hunter-Clad, which was one of the worst teams, and buffed them. So I'll have their changes here on screen, and in the description I'll link to the article so you can actually find the Balanced Dataslate and look at it yourself. Another big change is they nerfed Void Dancers to try to get them more in line with the other teams, trying to get them closer to that 50% mark. So I know it looks weird that they didn't actually nerf Void Scarred since they were the best team, but in the article it says it's a fairly new team, and they didn't actually see that much play, so I don't think they have the data behind the team itself to actually make a decision on if they need to nerf it and how they would nerf it. So I think they're waiting to see what they need to do with it before they make a hasty decision and overly nerf the team, which makes sense to me. And the biggest change that will actually affect a lot of teams is they change how grenades work. So basically what the change is any equipment that has indirect in it, so equipment, not actual war gear, you can only take once per team. So I know that was a really brief rundown of what actually got changed. I'll have the teams up on the screen here of what actually got changes. So if you see a team you play there, make sure you go check out the Balanced Dataslate so you can actually see what those changes were. It's a pretty fast read, just one page, and we knew most of what was being changed already. So I just want to make sure everybody knew that these balance changes did come out, and also let you know why you shouldn't worry too much about the actual meta, or the stats themselves. Thank you for watching.